Next up, Damien James is a self-taught artist, writer, and amazing dancer. He's written for the Chicago Reader and New City and has exhibited art in lots of questionable places. Give it up for Damien.
Hello. My name is Damien James. It's always been Damien James. Here's proof. I have a cousin in Florida, a woman with a memorable name herself, Martina Nymphy. It always sounded kind of like a sexy elf to me. And Martina thinks my name is Damien Edwards. She thinks this repeatedly, despite my admittedly minimal efforts to disabuse her of this notion. I don't know her that well. She went to grade school with my mom, and they fought cancer together. And I've seen her maybe twice in 20 years, but maybe Martina knows something I don't. Am I also Damien Edwards? I did some research and found Damien Edwards who'd been convicted of murder in New Jersey because he stabbed a guy. I have been to Jersey, but I really only thought about stabbing myself when I was there. I found another Damien Edwards who's a singer in Bristol. He has a medium build. Well, I do very much enjoy singing. Honestly, my voice is a little better than this guy's. Another is a football player. You can probably tell from my medium build that I am not. I'm of course not Damien Edwards, but I have always been curious about other Damien Jameses. Oddly enough, here's one that is a football player, so perhaps football attracts 2 out of 3 Damiens on average. I also found an Australian DJ, apt, and Damien James, who describes himself as a clean corporate ventriloquist. I am far from clean, motherfuckers. The last time I did a PK, I talked about a drawing I made of the word cunt. It's a fun word to say. I met another Damien James on Instagram who not only lives in Chicago, but was born in the same year as me. I asked him to be here. Other Damien James, are you here? He kind of gave me an excuse. I was hoping he'd make it though. Names have always fascinated me. I've got 2 daughters who both have entirely different last names, and both are hyphenates, no less. So 4 different names between them. Their first names are different as well, obviously. But look at that, I just lost my place. Ah, yes, irony. So, I'm Damien James, the artist. Look at that, I forgot myself in all of this. I make art for a living, which is a very easy way to survive. I don't make one particular type of art, though I do usually just use markers. These are markers. I like to make portraits because people's faces fascinate me as well. How so much can be conveyed with the eyes if the one broadcasting is open and the one receiving is paying attention. Capturing emotions and teasing out states of being with eyes is something I always strive for. And watching other people look into them and respond is also pretty interesting. I make work based in text forms as well, and language, mostly in an attempt to figure out who the fuck I am in this world. These, for example, are the words, "I made my bed, and I'll lie in it." And this is a Talking Heads lyric in Latin. There's a lot of Sharpie there. I like playing with words and manipulating them, divesting them of power and investing them with meaning. And recently I drew a picture of a name, not my own perhaps, surprisingly, but the name Delilah. And not the Delilah of Samson hair chopping fame, but the Delilah who is my 3rd daughter. A little over 17 years ago, she was stillborn after being carried to full term. And for 17 years, I've carried varying degrees of guilt and shame surrounding her. I would have been 25 at the time, and The simplest truth is that I just didn't want another child. This was 2001, 2002, around there. So when she died, my young self felt responsible. On the 17th anniversary of her birth and death, which was just in April, I took her ashes to Michigan and I spread them at my mother's grave. And it was the first time I had really been able to release these feelings in any meaningful way. And it was in the process of releasing these ashes that the drawing kind of came to me. And what it represents for me is how obscured by emotion and complicated by history this tiny human has been for me. But if you move across the page from right to left, the idea of Delilah becomes almost oxygenated and clarified until we're left with just a single word, the name. And for the first time in 17 years, that name hasn't just been associated with abject sadness and regret. Rather, there's some joy at knowing she existed on Earth for at least a moment and beautifully complicated and enriched my life in her way. And, now she's given me this. And I'm sharing a little of that with you, and I thank you for receiving. I think that everyone has these mechanisms that hold our noses in guilt and shame. Usually for much longer than we need to wallow there. But it's essential to get fresh air. If I didn't have art to help me breathe, I would probably end up stabbing a guy. Thanks for sharing 400 seconds with me.